I have
Thank
3
you.
brushes that are 0. So they all look a little bit different,
Oh,
but they all have a very fine ending to them. So whichever
mm.
one you're comfortable with, you go ahead and use that one. I have 2 6s. You can see
Oh,
one is a little bit heavier than the other, one is a little bit longer, but they're
hmm.
both 6 and they'll both hold a lot of water. So use the one you're most comfortable with. That will be for our background and for those poofy trees in between our birch trio. And I'm using a number 3 brush today. So I also put out a liner brush. So if I get my liner brush wet, it will go very, very thin. And you can see the difference between a 3 and a 6, or 3 and my liner brush. So
Right.
liner brush, you won't have the same control because it's just that much longer. But for branches, for trees, it's a very good brush. So if you want to try that today, that would be good. If not, that's okay. You can try it another project another time.
Mhm.
And your gift card. So whatever you've got, a plastic card, again, it'll be the cheapest use of a credit card you ever used. You can wipe off the edges when we're done. This will be for the birch trees. So really handy for the birch trees. You can do it with a brush, but using a card like that, like this, really helps to give the look of birch on the sides of the trunk of the tree. We'll also want paper towel. Because we're going to do a little bit of clouds in the sky, paper towel really helps with that. And 2 containers of water. Well, one to rinse your brushes and one to have clear water. We have our card, which is ochre, my favorite color. So one of my favorite colors. And today colors are cobalt blue. If you want, if you don't have cobalt blue and you want to use a different blue, that's fine. That's okay. We will also use a little bit of burnt sienna, just a hint of it in the trees. And most of it will be done in black or gray. So you can make gray just by adding water to your black, or you can use an actual gray color. So whatever you've got, use it and have fun with it. Practice, play. So we have a few people on. We've got another couple of minutes before we start. So welcome. If you're here, a couple of containers of water, some kind of card, a plastic card just to use to scrape for the trees, brushes, 0, 3, and 6, and a liner brush if you have one, long bristle. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're on board. Thank you for coming. This is a very subtle picture. I think you'll enjoy it. It's very different. It doesn't have that vibrancy. You have to look at it a couple of times to actually see the trees, but when you do, you can't unsee the trees. So it's kind of cool that way. And we only taped green tape 3 stripes up, not even going all the way to the bottom, but yes, definitely all the way to the top. And drew in branches, and we'll just shade in those trees in the background. So again, welcome, and let's get into art mode. So we will do those 3 deep breaths like normal. So first deep breath in, and hold it for a second, and release. Drop those shoulders way down. Put your hands down to the sides. Just let any tension drip off your fingers. Anything troubling you, just let it go for now. You've given yourself the time to be here. Give yourself the gift of 1 hour of time just for you for this project. Second deep breath in, and hold it for a second, and release. Really let that go. You can make noise if you want, if you're by yourself and you're comfortable with that. Ooh, just let that go. Sometimes that feels really good. If you're in the middle of the forest, who's going to hear you? Are the deer going to hear you? Who knows, right? The chipmunk going by. Whoa. Oh, third deep breath in. And hold it just for a second. and release. Really let that go. Drop any tension. A bit of a meditation for you. Give your shoulders a shake. We hold a lot of tension in our neck, so you can let that go. And winter's still upon us. I don't know if you have a groundhog where you are. We have Lucy the lobster, believe it or not. Lucy the lobster saw her shadow, and yes, we're getting 6 more weeks of winter. Funny though, it's 6 more weeks till spring or 6 more weeks of winter. So whatever way you want to play it, I think it's a hallmark occasion. So I think they've created it as a moneymaker. So anyhow, whatever way you look at it, we've got only 6 more weeks, and then we can start our planting and getting outside in our shorts and stuff. So something to look forward to. So with that, I'm going to turn my camera, and I have the same as what I asked you to do. I have a piece of paper with a bunch of squiggly lines and 3 pieces of tape. So hopefully you've been able to do something similar to that. I think some of you showed me your creations, so good for you. So with that, we're going to start with the top of our picture. So this is our dividing line. That's the dividing line. So from there up, we're going to paint this gray or a lighter black. So I'm not getting my full canvas wet. I'm only getting black on my brush, just lightening it up a little bit with water. And then I'm going to just start to paint that color up into my sky, right to the top of the canvas. So this is going to be just a little bit darker than the sample I showed you, because I think it's just a little bit lighter than I wanted it. Start going right over to the outside. Again, just bringing that gray black up into the picture, right to the top. Always fun when we get into actually putting the color on. And the same, just from this edge all the way up, that gray black. And if some is lighter than other spots, that's okay. It is a sky. They're not always identical in every spot. And while that's wet, I'll set my brush aside and take a paper towel, and I want some clouds in my sky. So I'm going to use my paper towel and just make a little bit of cloud, just by lifting off some paint. Now, if I take from one side of the tree, I'll want to balance it by taking from the other side of the tree as well. And so I'm just lifting off a little bit of paint, just lightening up my background, just a little subtle lift. And if it's lighter and darker, I've got a little bit of dark in here, a little bit lighter in some spots. That's okay. There will be branches on there, so we won't even see that background that well. So this is where we're at, just this gray background, using your paper towel, just lifting off a little bit for clouds. And then we're going to move from the sky down into the ground, down onto the earth, and I'm using cobalt blue. So with my cobalt blue, I want to start to create the look of shadows on the snow. So down below is going to stay white for the most part, but we're going to create some shadows. So I'm just putting a few lines, and they're going to go in the same direction Even if I go over my tape to make sure I'm going in the same direction, that's okay. We will be removing the tape. And your shadows may not show up at the same spot that mine do. And then just like I did with the clouds up above, I'm going to use a dampened paper towel and I'm just going to tap off a little bit, just lighten those just a little bit, those shadows. Even here, I'm wiping a little bit, so they're going to be light and dark in spots. And you can even bring that shadow down just by using whatever paint you've got on your paper towel. You can use that as well and let that be part of your snow. So see, that lightens that up quite a bit. And it gives a little bit of a shadow. Shades that just so subtly. And if when you're doing it, you take off more than you want, you can put that back on again. That's up to you. Just demonstrating how you can do that if you want to. And lighten again if you feel the need. So that was using my number 6 brush. And now I'm going to move to my 0 brush, the smallest one I've got. And with black, just straight black, wherever these little grasses are, I'm just going to flick with my brush just over the lines where they are. I'm just adding that little bit of black. And this is grass just poking out of the snow. And grass doesn't always grow straight. Sometimes it crosses over another branch, another blade. And it will dry lighter. So if you want to put on a darker coat, a second coat, go ahead and do that. But we're going to leave the base white. This is just grasses poking out of the snow. And some can be lighter and some can be darker. But if you feel to add just a couple more at the base of the trees, that's okay. Go ahead and do that. And then we're going to work on these bushes in the background between the trio birch. So I'm using clear water and just putting a drop of water on each of those spots. I'm not painting the whole thing. I'm just doing a drop of water, just a drop. And then I'm going to add black to my drop of water. So right now I just have 4 little spots. And I want to just spread that around and create the look of that tree that's drawn in there. And I'm going to let that dry. So it will be darker than the other background because it's fresh. And if it looks a little bit different, a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger than what you've already drawn in there, that's okay. What we want is just a shadow in behind the trees. And that's what that will be. Once we finish this composition, you'll see. So if you've got your trees in the shadows in the background behind the trees or between the trees, we'll move on to those branches. So when we paint a branch, if we paint a branch and don't attach them together, if we leave a gap in between, our eye naturally will fill that in. So they don't have to be all attached to each other. It's okay to leave a gap in between. And I am using, just for demonstration, a liner brush. So this is a liner brush that doesn't have the same control. So some of the branches, they won't be completely straight because the liner brush has just really long bristles. I can use a zero brush and do the same or similar, but I don't have that same wispiness. So if you have a liner brush, this is a good time to practice with it, or practice with it another time when you're prepared. But I will use the liner brush for this purpose. So I'm just using black. Now black, it will dry lighter. So we want these branches to be fairly dark. So use full strength black. And like I said, I'm using my liner brush. And all of those branches, you see I've got a little bit of break between those branches. They do not have to touch. So wherever there are branches drawn on your painting, go ahead and paint those in. And if you don't have a steady hand, this is a perfect project for this because branches aren't straight. They have a little curves and little wiggles in them. It just happens as they grow. So there's lots of branches here, so take your time putting those on. And remember, this is just a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be perfect. And hopefully as you're doing this, you're starting to see how the background color, even if it wasn't all uniform in color, how it's really starting to show up with this stark black branches. And if while you're doing this, your shoulders are way up to your ears, just stop and give yourself a deep breath. Just let it go. Drop those shoulders and start again. feel you want to add a couple of branches on, go ahead and do that. They're your trees. Have fun with it. So that was done using the liner brush with really long bristles. So if you have a brush that looks like that and you don't know what to do with it, this is a perfect application. So some of those bristles or branches have started to dry a little bit lighter. This is a good opportunity to go back and really give them a nice coating. If they get a little heavier, that's okay. Because watercolor will dry 20 to 30% lighter from when we put it on. That's exactly what happens here. Now we're just about half time, so while you're finishing that up, I'll just read our card. It is an ochre card and says, "Compassion is my compass. I am willing to hold space for the experience of others." So that's very deep. Compassion is my compass. I am willing to hold space for the experience of others. So that could be with learning, that could be with being understanding, that could be with lots of things. Being willing to hold space for the experience of others. Well, thank you for saying stop for that card. I appreciate that. And with that, we'll move on to the next part. This is the fun part where we get to take this tape off. So hopefully you've used tape that comes off easily. I use dollar store or inexpensive tape, but I'm going to pull that tape very gently, slowly, so that you don't tear your paper. And there's my center birch tree. And I did put them on a little bit of an angle on purpose, so hopefully you did as well. If you didn't, that's okay. But very slowly, I have taken this off and ripped my canvas, so I'm speaking from experience, just really slowly. So there's my second birch tree, and here comes the third one for the trio. So just lifting that edge very carefully, very slowly, lifting that up. And I know it's white on white here, but we will identify where that tree is at the bottom. And this is for magically. If we didn't have a tree or didn't know there was a tree there, ta-da, we have a tree. So starting with my clear water, just dipping my brush in, I'm just going to put a line up the side, the outside edge of my first tree on the left-hand side, just going right up to the edge of the canvas. It's just clear water. So all I've done is put clear water on this outer edge of this tree. Just a bit of clear, not a lot, just a little bit. And then I'm going to put black paint on there. On some of the spot, I'm just going to sporadically put that on there. It's not on every section. I've left some gaps in between. And then I'm going to use my card. I'm going to pull that paint across. So I'm giving the look of bark on my tree. Because there was a little bit of water there, that paint should move. If for whatever reason it's not moving, add just a little bit more water and then pull it across. And it doesn't have to be a big solid line. It can be just tiny lines. So now I see I have one edge of my birch tree. I'm going back into the clear water, rinsing my brush, going back into the clear water. On the other side of the tree, starting at the top, I'm going to do a couple of lines coming down, but in between those. So not at the same spot that I've already done on the other side. And I'll add just a little bit of black wherever that water is. And I'm going to use my card and go the other direction. You can use your brush if you like, if the card isn't working. Now staying with the same tree trunk, wherever a branch has come out, it takes a lot of strain for a tree to have a branch come out of its trunk. So we're going to add a little bit of darkness at that spot where the branch has come out. We'll just add a little bit of dark and just a shadow down below it. So wherever you put a branch that's come out of the tree, add that little bit of dark along the trunk. And we can also, so I'm using I'll use my number 1 brush, or sorry, my 0 brush, and I'm going to put a few little blemishes in the tree. Just a few little markings where the bark has been lifted, or there's been some damage, could have been wind, could have been a branch hit it. I'll just put a few little markings here and there in the tree with black. Just to give, and I'll actually go to the outside edge with a few, with some black, and bring it forward. So it helps to identify the outer edge of that tree. And you can do a little bit on both sides, but we're still just working with the first birch tree of the trio. And while I've got that brush out with black on it, I'm just going to go underneath my little trees at the side and just give them a little bit of a shadow at the bottom. Just to help identify the break between the snow and the bottoms of those trees, my forest edge. And I can soften that up just by lifting that a little bit with a dampened brush. Just bring that up just slightly, just to soften that edge. I'm going to switch to my number 3 brush with water and a watered down burnt sienna. So it's very subtle, it's very light, even lighter than that. Very subtle that you hardly see it, but it will show up on the trunk of your tree. And I'm not painting the whole trunk. I'm just putting it here and there, coming up the tree. So it sort of blends in with the black. But it does add a little bit of life to your tree. And if you like, you can add a little line coming up the center. Just blend that in. If you've seen birch trees before and you're going by memory, you'll know what that subtle color looks like on the birch trees. And with clear water, I'm going to do my middle tree. So coming up with just clear water, up one side, coming up all the way up to the top. If you've got a bend in your tree, makes it look more natural. If not, you can actually create a bend in your tree. Now that I've got that water on there, I'm going to bring my black in there, just here and there, into the water. And then with my credit card or my gift card, plastic card, whatever you're using, I'm going to start just to bring that over. Some could sit heavier in the center. That's okay. Some might make it all the way over to the other branch or the other side of the trunk. That's okay. And some might just be a little marking. And where I put my water, it looks like I haven't quite got to the outside. So I'm going to take a little bit of black and just run it here and there, just up in between. It doesn't have to reach in every spot, but sporadic. And again, on the other side, I'll come down. Just, oops, looks like I've got a little bit of gray in my water. Just I've used my dirty water instead. So I'm just going to use that water, bring it right down to the forest floor. And then use my card and just bring that over. And it's okay to put a line up the center if you like. Sometimes bark splits like that. And remembering that wherever a branch has come out of the birch trunk, it's taken a lot of effort. So those spots need to have a little bit extra painting on them, a little bit of a shadow coming down. Or maybe you could put a branch right in the center of your tree, a little bit of a shadow, and have a branch come right out of the center of your tree. And then I want to take that subtle burnt sienna and just run it here and there up my tree. I can use clear water, just soften that out if I need. And then we come to our third tree from the base. I'm just putting water up one side of the trunk all the way up. And then I'm coming in with black And using my credit card, just coming across. So all three trees will look a little bit different. They'll all be birch trees, but they'll look a little bit different because of their bark. And running clear water up the other side or down the other side. Picked up a little bit of black there. Interesting. And I'm adding a little bit of black sporadically coming down the tree. And coming across the other direction. And again, remembering that it's a lot of work for this branch to come out of this tree, so we need to give it a little bit of shadow where it's pushed through that bark, wherever you put a branch. I'm going to let that dry for a second or two. I'm just going to go back to my center tree. I haven't put any little markings across, and I like to do that. Just what happens with bark over time, it just has little ridges and it shadows. So just put some of those marks in there. And now to that third tree, I'm just going to add some more of those little lines coming across. I can have a few at the sides and just have it branch out a little bit. They don't have to be perfect. They can just be, they're perfect in nature, but in your picture, it's okay. Just go with it. Let your brush flow. And again, rinsing off my brush and going into that burnt sienna. Just lightening it up with water. I'm going to go back onto my birch, just adding in some of that color. A little line coming up the center, just draw that across. And if your burnt sienna on your other trees has dried very light and you want to add a little bit more, this is a great opportunity, good time to just put a little more on. If it's darker than you like, you can add a little bit of water and just blend that out. It'll soften fairly quickly. you can put that as light or as dark as you like. And Nancy said she's just figured out how to sign in to Zoom on her new laptop. So welcome, Nancy. And the video, the recording will be available if you wish to do it again, or I mean, you're watching, but if you wish to do it the next time on your own, the recording should be available in a day or so. So I like to continue a little bit at the base of those trees, just with a little bit of extra grasses. So using black, I'm just going to tap a little bit of wet color. So this is fairly wet at the base of each of those trees. Not to do the whole bit, just a little bit at the base of each tree. And then with my card, I'm just going to pull up. And if I go below it, that's okay. If I cross over some of those branches, that's okay. It just gives a little bit of a base to my tree and snow. And this is your opportunity to sign your art. So wherever you feel comfortable to do that, if you're going to frame your art, you may want it a little bit higher than the corner so that it shows up if there's a mat experience. This is my art today. I hope you're happy to share yours as well. The colors, it's a little bit deeper than the original, so just having that depth of color, I'm enjoying it a little bit more. I think even the clouds in the sky show up better. How did you like doing that picture? Thanks, everybody. Bye now.